The last page has been turned on my most recent read, and it's another week and yet another book. But what's new? My reading pattern hasn't been great over the last 7 days, but I do have a number of new books on the shelf. Again, nothing new and no surprise, including the brand new and beautiful indie version of Death Comes to Marlow by Robert Thorogood, another cozy mystery that I'm going to get stuck into, and I don't know who the murderer is yet. But today we're not talking about that. And I have a guest. Hey!
Cheers.
Anyway, let's get back to the book, or get to the book in general. It's the 1959 novel Psycho by Robert Bloch. And here to talk about it and the Hitchcock movie from 1960 is Lorraine, who is definitely much better at talking horror than I am, because I can't actually watch it very well. I'm not a wimp. I just have different taste.
I've got a book for you.
So here we are. Unfortunately, the spoiler-free rule will not apply. There you go. There are going to be spoilers because we really cannot stay spoiler-free with this one. This episode will definitely be opinion-filled and we're both ready to roll. All of which means it's time for the latest episode of Being Bookish. I'm your host, Ray, self-confessed bookworm, introvert, hermit, long-term depression sufferer, and ex-coffee addict, even though I nearly fell to temptation this morning. Join me on my journey through my ever-growing to-be-read pile and enjoy the latest of my 100% opinion-filled book reviews. She was... Yeah. She was a fugitive lost in a storm. That was when she saw the sign, motel, vacancy. The sign was unlit, the motel dark. She switched off the engine and sat thinking, alone and frightened. She had nobody. The stolen money wouldn't help her, and Sam couldn't either, because she had taken the wrong turning. She was on a strange road. There was nothing she could do now. She had made her grave, and she'd have to lie in it. She shivered in the cold car, surrounded by shadows. Then, without a sound, a dark shape emerged from the blackness, and the car door opened. Psycho is not a tale for queasy stomachs or faint hearts. It is filled with horrifying suspense, and the climax, instead of being a relief, will hit the reader with bone-shattering force. Okay,
Did you
do you
write
think...
that?
No, I did not write
I was
that.
gonna say.
What, just now?
Was
I'm
that
not that
very
good.
Yes, you are.
I wish I were that good. So, do you think that summary actually suits the book?
Yeah, I was kind of like, really into it. Like, really into it. The summary. I was like, "Oh, well done, Ray," but it wasn't you.
No, it
Um.
wasn't me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was good.
So, you chose this book. What made you pick this out of the hundreds of horror novels there are out there?
Well, I'm a big fan of the film. I do love the film, and I'm trying to not listen to audiobooks and read stuff, and I'm kind of like obviously using you as a way to, because I'm not really doing my podcast anymore, and I'm using you as a way to kind of do horror. And I was actually going to do this book and the film for mine, so I selfishly went, oh hey Ray, why don't we do this for your podcast? So yeah.
But then I do books and I try and do a variety. So this one is definitely outside of my comfort zone. I mean, I love Stephen King. There is something
Mm.
about Stephen King's novels that I could probably read until the cows come home. I've actually got one on my TBR right now, somewhere
Which
behind
one?
me. Fairy Tale,
Oh, okay.
which is a nice big thick book that came out last year. I think I got it for Christmas.
Yeah, see, this one had only like 150 odd pages for
Yeah, it was very short.
153, I think. So I was
Yeah.
like, and I remember I had about 40 pages left, and you were like, oh, I need to read this today. And I was like, all right, yeah, I need to finish it. And you just text me like, I'm done. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was a quick book to read. It's quite funny because I sent a message to another friend saying, "Oh, I've just finished this book," and she said, "Is it a novel or a novella?" And I said, "It still classes as a novel as it's over 100 pages."
Yeah. Well,
But
see,
I think I...
I was reading it like because I have to sit with my kid while she goes to bed, but we got her blackout. So I was reading it while she was going to sleep, but then we got blackout blinds for her room, and I couldn't see the pages anymore. So then I had to find other times to read it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
That's it though. Everybody has their different things that they find time for.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I tend to just sit down and read at any opportunity that I get rather than
Hmm.
having to wait for a specific time.
Yeah, yeah. I do the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. You have a life.
So do you.
Yeah, this is my life. But it's one of those books. I found it very interesting. We are going to be talking about the book in comparison with the film because there are quite a few differences between the two
Hmm.
that were very interesting, I found, especially when you compare and you look at the characters and you compare them to the one to how they are portrayed on the page.
Mm.
Because I think in the film they chose far more. I mean, Anthony Perkins is actually quite a pretty actor.
Actually, when I watched the film, because I watched it the other week, and I was like, "Oh my god, he's really cute."
Yeah,
Like, I was like,
exactly.
"He's actually an extremely attractive man," and I feel like because of the way they portray him in here, he's kind of like this, um, not so attractive man. Um, and then I was watching it, and he's actually quite endearing in the film. You know, he's quite sweet. I mean, obviously, take the murder thing aside,
Yes.
but you kind of feel a bit sorry for him
But then I
in the
think that
film?
but you do the same in the book because when Mary first arrives at the motel,
Mm,
she almost finds some kind of bond with him. She's recommending that he gets help for his mother and has her section,
mm,
which he takes kind of offense to. And there's this element of he's trying to appeal to her better nature. And the funny thing is, neither of them really have a good nature because Mary's not exactly a nice person. And I think that when you see, obviously, the very, very famous shower scene
mhm.
in the film, you forget that actually she's just basically stolen $40,000 worth of somebody else's money and is on the run.
Yeah.
So she's not exactly an innocent angel, and you forget that in the moment where she's being stabbed through the shower curtain.
Yeah, I found with the film because obviously one of the differences at the beginning was we see the boss
Yeah.
spot her in the car and we have the whole like in I think if you hadn't read the book, because obviously I hadn't until we decided to do this and I'd seen the film before, but you've got that cop there who's really kind of on her tail like, and when she's trying to buy the cars and swap the cars, it's very intense and they're not sure what to do. But with the book, it just seems a bit more like, oh, she goes off, she gets a car and
That's the
stuff like
thing.
that.
In
I
the
thought
very
she was more
beginning
likable in the film than she was in the book.
in that's the thing in the
Yeah.
book, you get to find her you hear her ulterior motives as
Mm.
she's planning them, whereas in the film, obviously, you don't get to see the inner workings of her mind,
No,
which
but I want her to get away. See, in the book, you're kind of like, oh, that's terrible. You've done that. But in the film, I'm like, quick, drive to get away from the cops. And like, do you know what I mean? It's really, even though she's wrong, there's just something
and there are
weird.
no cops in the film either. Well, there is the,
Yeah.
sheriff at
Yeah.
the end, but that's less to do with the money than it is the disappeared people.
Mm,
In the film, he's a police officer, he's a detective,
mm.
whereas in the book, he's a private eye.
Yeah. What's his name? Abergast, was it?
Yes,
Abergast? Yeah.
yes, it is. Arbogast.
Abergast, yeah.
That's the thing. I think that I found the, comparison of the characters quite interesting because you have, obviously, as I said, Anthony Perkins is quite a good-looking young man,
Mm.
and in the book, the impression you get and the description of Norman Bates is that he is a chunky, short, unattractive, almost hermit-like, very, um, introverted young man
Yeah.
who has 0 interpersonal skills. I mean, there's no doubt that obviously Norman Bates in whatever guise hasn't got very many interpersonal skills.
Yeah, because when we see the whole like kind of his first interaction with her in the book when Mary goes to his house and has
They
something
have
to
tea
eat.
together, don't
Yeah,
they?
and all that kind of stuff. Like you can tell that he hasn't done that a lot. Whereas when I see him, especially when in the film when he's with her and Sam, when he talks to Sam, he looks like someone that's not kind of afraid to talk to people. I didn't
More
get that because, like,
confident.
especially with Sam, he was very like in his face. Whereas in the book, you kind of feel like he's a bit more held back. I didn't feel like he was that. I didn't feel like the character in the book was the character in the film
He was a
at
bit
all.
more
Well, not
aggressive
at all,
though.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
He was a bit more aggressive in the book with Arbogast when he showed up, and
Mm.
he had that an element of arrogance in the, "Oh, no, she hasn't been here, I don't know who you're talking about," even after he'd seen the photographs. But at the same time, when he's with her and when he's with Lila, he's very, scared of his own shadow.
Yeah, but you got to remember when Abergast is there, it's just him. But when Sam and Lila are there, there's two people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of harder to, if you knocked off one of them, then the other one's going to be like, what, where is he or where is she? Like, do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think they did it. I mean, I think the way they portrayed him in the film was really good. And I mean, obviously Hitchcock is known for his suspense and all that kind of stuff. And I do think it keeps you on your toes a lot. But because I'd seen the film obviously before I read the book, and then I read the book and I was just kind of like, it I'll be honest with you, when I was reading the book, I felt like I'd forgotten the film because I was like going, "H hang on, is his mother alive? Hang on,
Because
is
there
yeah,
it does come across that way because you have
yeah,
there are the elements of conversation that he has with her, and
mm,
it feels as though he's having a conversation with another
yeah,
character rather than, as it turns out, his split personality.
yeah. Because I was in my head, I was like, "I know she's not," but then I was like, "Am I remembering it wrong?" It was really weird because the book kinda sends you on a different kinda path with her, and even in the film when so I read the book, and even though I'd read it, and I even Googled it, and I was like, "No, she is dead." And then when you're watching the film and Marion is hearing her shout, she's having a go about
Yeah,
him talking about a thing, and I'm like, "Oh, I've read it wrong again. She is alive." And but my brain was like going, she's not Lorraine. So why do you think that she is? Because it was so convincing. Like when he does the mum's voice up there in the house and Marion hears it, it sounds like his, like what I presume his mum sound like. Like,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? It was just so weird. Like, and it's actually quite a confusing film to watch at times and a confusing book to read because you're constantly kind of questioning this whole thing about his mom.
yeah, you doubt I think that that is part of the purpose of the book, though, to
Mm,
give you this element of doubt about his character and about his relationship with his mother, because of
mm,
course then also when I suppose we should probably explain it. Mary Crane steals money from her employer
mm,
because she wants to go and help her fiance, Sam Loomis, in Fairview to pay off his debts and so they can get married and buy a house together because that's their intention.
silly, silly woman.
Silly woman, exactly. So she is driving to Fairview to see Sam and to gift him this money, and she takes a wrong turning. It's tipping down with rain. She has no idea where she is because I think she's only done the journey once previously,
Mm,
and she ends up at this darkened motel that she initially believes is closed. And
mm,
then Norman Bates opens the door. He invites her for supper as she is checking in under a false name. And then after they've got to know each other and he thinks that she's flirting with him, he has a discussion with his mother, who sends him into a spiral of self
mm.
doubt. And the next thing you know, his mother has slit. Mary's throat and cut her head off in the shower,
As you do.
as you do. In obviously, it's actually far more gruesome in the book than it is in the
Yes.
film.
Yeah, in the film, it's stabby, stabby, and
Yeah.
it's kind of that, whereas in the book, yeah,
I mean,
it's
everybody knows
definitely
it.
yeah,
That sounds like bed springs.
yeah,
Everybody knows that scene. However, in the book, if you're expecting that, you're not gonna get it. You are going to get a straight on the
mm.
next I think the line is, "And then her head was cut off."
Yeah, he's more violent in the book
Oh,
than
far
he
more
is in
so.
this. Yeah,
And
he's
then he
more
dumps her and her car in a
mm,
sand in a, in s in, oh, what's the word?
the
Where's my
swamp.
brain? In a swamp, yeah.
Yeah,
He dumps her car and her body
without
in the
getting the
swamp
money.
without getting the money because he doesn't know it's there. He
No.
thinks that she's this innocent young woman who's been flirting with him, no idea that he has actually been harboring a criminal.
Yeah, because he thinks, doesn't he, that I think it's in the book, he thinks that you know the way he's got that peephole so he can see
Yeah.
into the room. He thinks that she knows that
Yeah,
he's
he's
looking,
yeah.
so she puts on a bit of a show for him, doesn't he?
Yes, while she's getting ready to have a shower,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
cleaning off the day. And then people start looking for Mary,
Mm.
including Milton Arbogast, who is an investigator hired by Mary's boss, who
Yeah.
happens to be Mr. Lowry,
Yeah.
and Lila, Mary's younger sister, who goes to see Sam, having discovered, which she didn't know, that her sister was engaged. She turns up at Sam's record shop and says, "Is my sister here? Have you heard from her? She went missing and I haven't seen her, and no one knows where she is." And she
That
is soon followed by by Milton Arbogast, who arrives to ask pretty much the same questions.
so I like thought to myself when I was watching Lila, I was like, if I ever go missing, I want Lila to be the one looking for me because I thought she had such balls. Like she'd be the type of character that would make a really good final girl because she goes up to that house, which the house in itself is terrifying, and she just goes in there, she wanders around, and then she goes down to the is it the cellar that
Fruit
has got
seller.
the roots fruit cellar, and we see the whole thing with the mother, and you know, she just I don't know, I just love the ballsiness of that because like when you think of this, because it's obviously based off the whole Ed Gein thing, and when I was looking off of that and I just kept thinking of like serial killers and you know, it's just but like would I have gone in there? I'd like to think I would,
I know
but
I wouldn't. I'd have run about 10 miles in the other direction.
I probably would have went in there, but I would have been a bit more like I think I'd have been a bit more kind of like aware. She kind of just went in and out and stuff like that. But I think that's the whole Hitchcock thing. Like it gives you that suspense. And then when she goes downstairs and she goes in there and we see the little old lady.
And she was driven by the fact that she had
Yeah.
found her sister's earring
Hmm.
in the motel room and
Yeah.
knew therefore that Mary had definitely been there. I mean, the
Mm.
thing with Lila is, in a way, she is a final girl. In an
Yeah.
indirect way, she is, because she is the last girl standing, and
Hmm.
he does attempt to kill her.
Yeah. Oh, that was so funny. I don't mean
Funny.
him trying to kill her, but when I'll be honest with you. So when she goes down there and she's talking and she hears that voice and she thinks obviously it's the mother and the mother turns around and it's you know it's a skeleton and then Norman comes in with the knife and he's trying to kill her so that
And he's
but
also dressed in his mother's clothing.
which is really weird. And then he gets grabbed by Sam because Sam comes to help her. But the way he kind of dramatically kind of collapses in his arms and is all like, "Ah." So I thought that was a bit funny. That kind of
But
made me
that's I
chuckle
mean,
a bit.
that's the film. In the book,
Yeah.
it is far there is also the element of Lila isn't gonna take it sitting down because
Mm,
she has spoken to the detective, and she said she talked about how Arbogast had mentioned Norman's mother, and they'd seen
mm,
her at the window in that when they went up to the motel, and he says, "Oh, well, no, that can't be right because his mother killed herself and her lover. She committed suicide." when he was in his teens and he ended up in hospital, couldn't even go to her funeral.
Mhm.
And so there's that moment of realization that all of the things they'd heard were completely false.
Mhm.
And that's what made them both go to the motel in order to find out finally what was going on. Because, of course, Arbogast had said, I'm going to find out, I'm going to trace your sister, and I'm going to get that money back.
Yeah.
I mean, because ultimately that was his goal. That was what he'd been sent there for. He wasn't there to find her so much as find the money.
Oh, yeah, he didn't give a toss about marrying.
Oh,
He
no.
just wanted the blooming money, and that's the thing.
Mary.
And I think Mary, sorry, um, yeah, in the book she's marrying and
No,
things.
in the
Apart
book, she's Mary.
in the
In the
film,
book
she's
she
married.
in the film, she's Marion, and the reason she's Marion in the film is because
Yeah,
there was a Mary, an
yeah, they
actual
were worried
Mary
about a
Crane.
lawsuit.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
Mary Crane living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time the film was made. But that
yeah,
must have meant that there was a Mary Crane living in Phoenix, Arizona when the book was written, because it was only written the year before.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So they were worried about because people, I suppose, get a bit funny about that.
We were talking about how, Marion stroke Mary was not the innocent party, and how,
Oh, Abergast was just
yes,
basically worried
Abigail
about
was
them.
just worried about the money that she'd
Yeah,
stolen.
and I like the thing is about that is kinda like, I get that because obviously what she did was terrible, and £40,000 back in the late 50s is a humongous amount of money, but then you just think of the sister, like, and I would be, we'd all be the sister, who cares about money when it comes to someone's life? But nobody, seemed to I felt like nobody really cared about Marion/Mary.
That's the thing, I think that, I mean, Lila did,
No,
because
apart from her.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think Sam did to a degree,
I think he
but
was a bit of a pussy, to be honest with you.
he did also say that she'd changed a lot. He'd noticed there were a lot of character changes in the person she became before the whole theft, because when they first met, she was far lighter, and when as the relationship continued, her personality became far darker, far more obsessed, far, less kind and friendly than she'd appeared at the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which is probably what drove her to do what she did. I'm not making any excuses, because what she did was hugely wrong, but I do think that she had this element of, she wanted to be in control of something, and she felt like if she could give Sam this money and produce a way out for them both, running off to wherever with all of these ill-gotten gains, she would be giving him something that he felt inadequate in not being able to give her.
Yeah, because there was some talk about how he doesn't have much to give her and he lives in the back of the shop or something on a cot and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the shop's in debt, and he's struggling.
Yeah, so I don't think he really I don't know. I felt like in the film he was more passionate about her. Whereas I feel like in the book, it just felt a bit more, I don't know, maybe because you can see it and you could see him getting angry with Norman and you could see like the you know,
Emotion.
emotion behind it. Whereas I think sometimes in books, because I mean, you're probably a lot better at it than I am because you read a lot more than I do. But I think sometimes it helps for me when I read a book that I've seen the film with. Like I
Mhm.
don't do that with everything because I can picture the people. I can't seem to like so when I read this, I could picture Norman, I could picture Marion and or Mary, and
But how did you picture them? Did you picture them as they are portrayed in the film, or did you picture them as they were described in the book?
no, the whole way through because I've seen Psycho before the book, I pictured Janet Leigh and I pictured Anthony Perkins. Like, do you know what I mean? So when I look at something that maybe that's just me, I don't have the imagination for it. But when I read something that I haven't seen, it's harder to picture it. I find it sometimes a bit harder to connect with it. Maybe that's why I read a lot of true crime
But
because
also, obviously, we've read previously, we've both talked about Practical Magic, which
which I'd
obviously
seen,
most people have
yeah,
seen the film, and The Body, which is
which
Stand By
yeah, I've
Me.
seen, yeah, and didn't we do another one? Oh, I didn't read the book for Firestarter, that was just a film,
No,
wasn't it?
that was just a film.
Yeah,
I did the book on my own.
yeah. But yeah, so sometimes I think for me, I like even when we talk about the fact that you prefer Twitter over Instagram, because I'm a very visual person, whereas you like to read.
Yes,
You need the words, I need the visual. And I think that's sometimes why I struggle with books because I can't sometimes picture what it look like. Because I'm what even like, when you listen to a podcast even
yes.
and you try and figure out what that person looks like, I get it wrong every time. When I
But
see a
you thought I looked like my original mini me, which would have been quite nice.
No, but but that's the thing. It's like I've heard all these podcasts, and then I because I've met a couple of you in person and some of you online, and I'm like, oh, that's what you look like, and I've completely wrong all the time. So I'm not very good at. I'd be a terrible profiler. I just will get it wrong all the time, you know.
The
But
criminals would love you.
yeah,
The police not
exactly.
so
They
much.
they they want me to be a profiler. But yeah, so with this I was able to see Anthony Perkins and see Janet Leigh and
And that's not how they're described in the book at all.
no, no, they're not.
I
Like
have
and
to
it
be honest, I struggled quite a lot with Bloch's writing.
in what way?
It was quite disjointed.
Okay.
I didn't find I mean, I love a book where the story flows and it's smooth, right?
Mm,
Smooth sailing for the character, not necessarily smooth sailing in the situations, but the writing is very smooth. There's a nice pattern to it. And I
mm,
found his was quite disjointed,
okay.
which I didn't struggle with it, but I didn't find it as enjoyable a read as it may well have been. I think there were certain elements of this, not of the story, that I struggled with, but he was very abrupt in a lot of the sentences that he wrote and a lot
Mm,
of the situations.
okay. I think my problem with books is I'm such as you know, I'm not what you would call a patient person.
No,
So when I get like filler in a book, same with a film. Like we were talking about this the other day when it comes to like sex scenes. I'm like, I know what's happening. Give me some content. Give me some content. Like, do you know what I mean? I struggle with the filler
no,
of
this
books.
was we were talking about Glamorous, weren't we?
Yeah,
The new series with Kim Cattrall, and just to provide some context, there are certain you get promised something, and if
yeah.
it's not delivered and what they deliver is something else entirely, it's disappointing for anybody. It's the same with a book. If a book is marketed as, "Oh, this is amazing. I've read so many books that are marketed as this is the bestseller written by such and such, and you're going to love it because if you like
Mm.
this, you'll love that." That's not always true.
No, and I remember Dev, like, because Dev reads a lot and he read all the Game of Thrones books and he said that there was like 4 or 5 pages describing a dinner, a
Yeah.
feast. I would have been like, nah, not having it. You had steak and chips. End off with a glass of wine. Let's forget about it.
Yeah,
Like,
but
do you know what I mean?
they go into serious
Yeah,
detail in those
I
books.
haven't got the patience for it. I haven't. That's why when I picked this book and I was like, oh, it's only 150 words. I was like, 150 words, lovely, 150
That'd have been
pages.
nice.
Yeah. But that's the
You
thing. It's
slit
just
her
like
throat, they found her body in a river, the money was there, the end.
basically, yeah. So when they get too like into the details, I just can't. Like if I wrote this book, it would probably be 75 pages. Like, I just my brain just I'm so impatient. I'm literally one of these people, they're like, "Well, I just read the last page. Will I just read the last page?" Like, do you know what I mean? Because I'm so impatient. I feel like it's a problem.
Whereas for me, sitting down on a Saturday and picking up a 500-page book is my absolute idea of
We're
heaven.
never doing it.
Yeah, that's double 500 pages.
I know. No, we'd have to like plan it in 2027 or something if we were doing that. No.
There you go, you've heard it here first. 2027, we are going to be discussing it,
I just can't sit
plus the
still for that
1990
long.
adaptation with Tim Curry.
Oh, I wish I could. I envy you, Ray, that you can do that. I really do, and Dev's the same. I wish I was more. I wish I could sit still. I just can't sit still.
But then it's not for I think if everybody were the same, and this is something I've said
Mm,
before, if everybody were the same when it came to books, then the world
mm,
would be so boring. But it's also the same as, I mean, I've got a wide array of different genres behind me, though you can probably only
mm.
see a few.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could sit down and just read one genre.
No.
And I don't
Oh,
understand people that do.
no. You need it all.
Yeah, you do. I've got books about, I think these are all mythology. The next shelf down is science fiction fantasy. Shelf over there is all about dragons, and there's a load of romance and real weepies the other side. So, I mean, I think that you have to have that balance of everything. And this book for me, I actually would have liked a bit more exposition, a bit more narration, a bit more dialogue, a bit more character development would have been really
So, was it
nice.
not long enough for you?
I think that it lacked the character development that I think would
Okay.
have made Norman even a far more not likable character, because I don't think anything could have made him a likable character, but would have actually given far more information into his motive, which is why the TV series, I think that's why the TV series was so popular, because you got the motivation behind everything with the almost incestuous relationship between Norman and his mother.
Yeah, it was a bit like, yeah, it was a bit messed up. I'm not obviously a big. I think that obviously that's where they get the whole egging thing from, but I'm not. I'm not a big fan of that kind of thing.
Yet the
If
funny thing is though, apparently, though he only lived a few, I think he lived for, Robert Bloch lived 40 miles away from where the whole Ed Gein thing happened.
oh, really?
He was writing the book when it was going on,
Well, yeah, because this is 59. I think Egin got arrested in 57.
57. Yes.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
even mentioned at the end of the book.
Yeah, because you know what the weird thing is though, is because Ed Gein is like this massive, well-known serial killer, but I hate using this phrase, but he killed two people, only two people. And not only in the sense that, oh my God, one person is too many, but
Yes.
when you think of serial killers, like you look at your Bundys and your Kempers and, your Ramirez and
This
stuff
is
like
her
that.
area of
Yeah.
expertise, by the way.
No, no, but like, there's lots of people, but Ed Gein is like one of the most well-known serial killers out there.
But
And
I think that it's far more to do with what they discovered when they arrested him, which we are
yeah,
not going to go
exactly.
into. I
No.
think it's far more to do with that. I will post some links in the notes so you can do your own
Just watch the
research.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre and it'll give you a bit of an idea.
Yeah, just I'll post some links and it'll give you a path to your own research, because we don't need to go into it. However, I think that it was more what they discovered
Mm, what he
than the
did.
number of
Yeah.
people that were harmed in the process of his discovering who he was.
Yeah.
But there are also, I mean, there's so many things in the book about sex and gender.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a word that we grew up with, and I'm only saying this in reference to what we watched, and I know it's not a word we use. Yeah, what we read and what yeah, read. Well, yeah, but they say it when the only reason I'm thinking of it is because there's this moment where Lila and Sam are at the police station and they're talking to these people, and one of the cops uses the word transvestite, and that was very much what you would say if there was a bloke or a woman dressed in the opposite way. Usually it was a bloke dressed as a woman. You would say the word transvestite, which I know nowadays is not a word that people tend to use. But it's weird when, because obviously today it's very much a huge part of how we live and stuff like that. But back then it was like, "Oh, no, no. You didn't talk about it, you
Yeah.
didn't if you did it, you did it in the privacy of your own home," and all that kind of stuff. Um,
And they actually associated it a lot with
yeah,
specific mental disorders. And again, we are stressing this is what happened in the mid to
yeah,
early
yeah,
1950s and the early
yeah.
1960s, before it became something that is nothing to do with mental disorders. It was just the way it was interpreted.
But yeah, so when I heard, because I obviously, me and you were born in the 70s, so we grew up in a time where that word was used. And I'll be honest with you, when I was watching the film and he said transvestite, I was like, oh, we don't say that. You know what I mean? But not in a we don't. I just was like, I would never say that, but I would have in my 20s.
Mm.
I would have said that word. Do you know what I mean? Or transsexual is another word you would have said, you know? Um, but yeah, it's just it's interesting how far back it all goes, you
And it's
know.
interesting the interpretation that is given to it at that particular period in time. It just
Mm,
shows there are certain things. I mean, I haven't seen the 1998 remake with Vince Vaughn. I don't think I want to. Apparently,
uh,
it's awful.
is that
But
the Gus Van Sant one that
yes,
apparently doesn't? Yeah, yeah,
apparently it's awful.
yeah.
But
I've heard that.
I wonder how they would have handled that in 1998 in comparison with how it was handled in
I'd be
1960.
honest with you, in '98, I don't think it would have been that much different because it's only kind of been in the past few years that it's, you know, used differently. I don't think it would have been. I mean, I'll have to watch it to see because I haven't seen it. But actually no, I think I did see it, but I don't remember it.
That says a lot, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's good. But you know what? I I didn't think of him as being a transvestite in this. I didn't. I
But
just
then
think,
they make a point at the very end of the book and the film of highlighting that he wasn't a transvestite.
yeah,
It was his split personality
yeah.
disorder that caused him to believe he was his mother.
Yeah, because when you look at like transgender, it's like you're always a woman or you're always a man or whatever the way you want to describe yourself. Whereas in this, it was it wasn't like he was oh, I want to be a she, so call me that. It was like
Mm,
I'm going into this personality where I am my mother. It wasn't about I don't think it wasn't anything to do with him being a woman. It was about him being his mother,
yeah.
you
A
know.
lot of it says that it was due
Yeah.
to the guilt of committing matricide.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't anything about I don't think it was anything to do with gender. It was to do with the mother. That was the only and she happens to be a female. Like, it could easily have been had his father raised him, it could have easily has been his father. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
think it had anything to
But
do
his
with
father did a runner, didn't he? So he
yeah,
was left in the capable or not so capable arms of his mother, and she was
yeah,
a very domineering personality, and then she met
yeah,
somebody when Norman was in his teens, and all of a sudden this person who had been his and his alone was getting ready to get married. So he actually killed both of them.
yeah, yeah. So he had issues.
He had a lot of issues. I mean, the thing was he dissociated from his actions,
Mhm.
and when he killed Mary, he didn't even remember doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought that was very weird. And I think the whole thing of putting on his mom, like in the film when he puts on the wig and all that kind of stuff, like that's a whole new level of kind of like mental illness. Do you know what I mean? It's just it it's not like kind of going it, it literally is like Norman didn't kill those people.
Well,
Norma did.
that
Yeah.
was exactly the point
Yeah.
that the book is making. The
Yeah.
book makes the statement that he did not commit these crimes, his other personality did.
Yeah.
So therefore, how culpable was he for what he did?
And see, that's the thing though. So if the person he had killed was like someone, like say someone killed someone I cared about, and they were like, "Oh well, it was my split personality," you'd be like, "Oh, get to," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with him, but you can also see that that is a real thing, but it's also a very hard thing to accept as a reason.
And also a pretty hard thing to prove.
Yeah, because like I mean, I don't know if you've seen the film Primal Fear with Richard Gere and Edward Norton. That is
Yes, a
an
long time ago.
fabulous film, and it's the same thing. Edward Norton has got like this split personality thing, and it's really convincing. But that's the thing. But I think if you were the person that, someone you cared about had been killed, and someone's like, "Well, it was my mate Bob, my other person," you'd be like, "No, you wouldn't be having it," even though you know it's possible. But I mean, but then again, it's not, okay, if it was his other personality, fine, but he still deserves to be locked up for life. But apparently he gets out, as you said in Psycho 2 in
Psycho 2, 1980 yeah,
1983. Yeah.
1983,
Yeah.
and apparently Richard Bloch wrote a sequel called Psycho
Okay.
2,
Yeah.
which has nothing to do with the film because apparently Universal Studios did not like the book, so they went and wrote their own script for a sequel.
Oh, they
But
didn't like a sequel.
they didn't like his sequel, they didn't like
Okay.
Robert Bloch's sequel at all.
Okay.
So they wrote their own and made a sequel, Psycho 2. But Robert Bloch wrote a sequel called Psycho 2, which was apparently a commentary on slasher films, which is why Universal didn't like it. And in this film, Norman Bates escapes. Well, he doesn't escape. He is freed from the mental institute despite Lila, who is now married to Sam, doing her best to keep him in the mental
Mm.
institute, in the mental hospital. And he then goes off wearing a nun's outfit. And there's this entire, it's such a complicated storyline. It's far more bloodthirsty and gory than the first book.
Yeah.
And it involves a lot more split personality disorder, not on his part, on someone else's. And also, Lila's had a daughter with Sam called Mary, who um, takes umbrage at her mother trying to get Norman Bates resectioned and takes his side and ends up getting killed in a police shootout.
Bit weird.
So, I mean, seriously, that the entire thing is very bizarre. But then when you hear that Robert Bloch actually was a protege of Lovecraft, you kind of see it.
Mm. Yeah, that was a bit. Yeah. I don't know.
Peculiar.
I kind of want to watch it now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, as I said, the film is totally different. They didn't use
Yeah.
that script. They used another script entirely.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to see what happens now.
Well, you'll need to read the book then, because the film wasn't made.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of curious to see what they've done with the new
What they
film.
did
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
their sequel.
Yeah.
But it's very peculiar. I mean, as I said, I didn't find it to be written in my style. There wasn't enough description, there wasn't enough character building. You didn't get to know enough of the characters that you should care about
Hmm.
in order to actually care about them.
No. No, I think that, yeah, I think that's like in the book. The only person in the book that I really liked was Lila, if I'm
But do you
honest with
think
you.
that we could have done with far more
Yeah.
about her personality
Yeah.
to actually get a far more rounded view of who she was?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
And I
But I
think
will.
that may have also helped with Norman and
Mm,
understanding everything rather than hearing about it third person from the sheriff and
yeah.
then tiny bit at the end from the psychiatrist. It would have been good to see an element of his character on the page.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was fine with it, but I guess you're a bit more of a experienced reader than I
Well, that's the thing, I wouldn't say that. I
am.
think that also the fact that a lot of the character is on screen.
Mm, yeah. I
So
think they
you
did a better job with some of them on the screen, to be honest with you. Yeah. Like Sam, I thought was better on screen.
That's the thing, I mean, Sam was very nondescript on paper,
Yeah. But on screen, he was almost like like when you think of like kind of like the Cary Grants and all this kind of stuff of the world, he
suave,
was like, yeah, suave. Yeah. He just had like, because they basically open the film, don't they, with Sam and Marion in that hotel room.
whereas in
And
the book,
yeah.
that's not there at all.
No, exactly. So, you know, but I think one thing this book film has done is it's influenced so much. I mean, like when you even hear the name Sam Loomis, you're gonna go straight to Halloween, and it's like, look what's come out of Halloween and the franchise that's been. And obviously there's inspiration there with the whole knife, and especially the action, because when you watch Psycho and the way the knife comes down, and it's kind of the same with Myers, there's no like real aggression in it. It's more, you kind of feel like you could dodge it because it's that slow. And
Yeah.
then like, even with the Scream films, you've got Billy Loomis and he's like taking the whole we will go a little mad sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So like, you got all these films that um
Or
that
influenced by it.
this has inspired. So, it kind of lives on. It kind of lives on through that, which I think is great. Like, it's nice when you watch certain films and you're like, oh my God, you got that from like the 60s, for God's sake. Like, do you
That's
know
the
what I
thing, I mean,
mean?
the '60s was an incredibly influential era for film.
Just, I feel like this film kind of, I mean, it gives you all of that, you know, where, and it's led on, to like the Halloweens and the Screams, the Billy Loomis character, they're there because of Psycho. Like, do you know what I mean? And Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I know that's kind of the Ed Gein thing, but you know, that was Psycho as well. So I think, you watch a lot of these things, and I don't really think we get the whole kind of it's you don't get the suspect. Like, I'm not a fan of Hitchcock as a person. I think he was a bit of a dick, but
Yeah, that's an understatement.
yeah, but
I mean, there are so many horrific stories about what he did to his female stars. So
exactly.
many horrific stories.
But the guy knew how to make a film suspenseful. Yeah.
But do you think the book is, I mean, we've said this several times before, and it's normally you asking the question, is the book better than the film? And for me, the film was better than the book in this instance because I think you got far more a rounded view of the characters than you did in on the page, which is disappointing.
Yeah. I agree. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the book and I'm glad I read it. But yeah, I got more out of the film than I did the book, if I'm honest with you. But maybe that's down to the acting of Anthony Perkins. Like, do you know what I mean? I thought he was amazing in this.
But I think that may also be down to the lack of characterization in the book itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've never read any other books by Bloch, so it may well be that this was a one-off and his characterization is much better in other works, but Lovecraft isn't great at character either. So
Mm,
maybe that's an influence that he has from his mentor.
yeah. Maybe. But, I either way, the book got us that film,
It did
you know
indeed.
so,
I mean, the
and
thing
it's
is
a
though,
great
we
film.
know that Hitchcock took a lot of influence from novelization
Hmm.
because obviously The Birds was from a Daphne du Maurier short
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
Rebecca was from another du Maurier
yeah,
novel, which is fantastic, and I would recommend you read it. I think it's amazing.
yeah.
It's quite
Okay.
a large book, but it is well worth a read. Honestly,
Mm.
it's superbly written.
Yeah,
And there's that
yeah,
dark, sinister undertone to the entire tale, which is fascinating. But du
well,
Maurier can create incredible characterization anyway.
yeah, well, okay, maybe I'll have a look at it. If it's dark, oh,
It is definitely dark. I mean, you must have seen the film.
I haven't.
Oh, well, there's another one, and it's a
Yeah,
Hitchcock movie too.
yeah, no, I haven't seen that. Not that I can recall, but that doesn't mean much nowadays.
And here we go back into talk about menopause.
I'll watch it, I'll be like, "Oh, yeah."
I think that they've made so many different versions of it now. I think there was
Mm,
even one that came out, I want to say last year on Netflix, but the original by Hitchcock is by far the
mm.
superior
Yeah,
because no
he's
matter
a
what you
great
say about his
filmmaker.
character,
He's
and
a
there's a
great
lot.
filmmaker. Yes. Yes. I mean, it's kind of one of those things you're like, "Ugh, why does it have to be him?" But no, he's an exceptional filmmaker. He
Whereas
really is, and he's inspired all these other filmmakers.
exactly. There is I mean, there is a lot to be said. He was incredibly talented, So
Mm.
it is a case of you have to a degree, separate art from artist.
Yeah, because I remember saying to myself, "Well, I don't think he's great if he had to do all those horrible things to get someone." But, like, when you 'cause the thing, especially with what he did with Tippi Hedren and the birds and stuff, but
That film's just terrifying.
I know, but some of the shots and the way he films stuff, it's just he knows how to.
You can think about what he could have done with today's technology.
But, like, even in the shower scene, like, you don't see much, and obviously it's black and white, so you don't even see the
And
blood
it's in
really.
shadows.
Yeah, but it gets you.
Mm,
It gets you, and when you see him, like, when you see, Norman coming in and he's got that dress and the wig on and stuff like that, it's terrifying, you know? It's like the way he runs with that knife, it
that's the
gets
thing.
you.
I think that that's the thing with though the book is far more grotesque in description,
Mm.
I think that the film would have lost something if they'd used that particular method of death.
Oh, that wouldn't have worked. You're right. It would not have worked. You need because I'm very much with film because I'm like, if anyone has listened to my podcast, I'm not about the gore. It doesn't impact it just grosses me out. It doesn't
Yeah.
scare me. I'm just like, no, I don't see it. Whereas with this, you're kind of like, because I think sometimes when you have less, it seems more realistic. Now I know we have certain serial killers and stuff like that who have done absolutely diabolical things, but when you watch gory horror films and you see them doing all sorts, you're like, "Ah, for God's sake, that wouldn't happen." Do you know
You're
what I
so
mean?
desensitized to it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, but when I see, like, kinda like the psychological aspect of it, like, she's on her own, she's in this motel in the middle of nowhere, and she's vulnerable because she's in the shower, and somebody's coming at her with a knife. I believe that could happen. Whereas when I watch something like Hostel, while I believe that's going on, it's a little bit harder to kind of process, if
Mm.
you know what I mean? And I think that's
'Cause
what
it's
makes
really
it
taking
scary.
you to the
Yeah,
absolute depths of
yeah,
human
depravity.
capability and yes, and depravity.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes films like Psycho believable is because you're like, "I could go on a road trip across America and end up in a motel and somebody could be crazy." Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, never going driving across America,
"Oh,
ever.
I did it. I've done it," you know?
Did you stay in a motel like that one, though?
I have stayed in a motel like that there. Not that motel, but I have stayed in a motel
I was
like
gonna
that.
say that motel's at Universal Studios.
Yeah, so it wasn't
I've
that,
got
but no,
pictures
I
of it
have stayed there.
somewhere.
But the motel I stayed in was in New York, so yeah, but it was still quite creepy. I found it really creepy. I felt very exposed.
But, yeah,
Um,
it's not somewhere I'd choose to stay because, I mean, the motel itself looks creepy as anything,
mm,
but it's
yeah,
meant to, and you can imagine coming across that in a darkened night when it's absolutely chucking it down with rain.
yeah, I'm not doing it.
No, but that's the thing, I mean, thank you so much for putting yourself through reading the book, but again, I have to say book over film or film over book
I take the film.
for this specific one or in general?
No, I just for this film, I would take this film over the book. I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed the film more than the book, but I did enjoy the book. But I just felt like I needed the visual for this, you know?
And
But then
also, for some reason, the book felt far more dated than the film,
yeah, yeah, I agree with
which
that
is
actually.
weird
Yeah,
because quite
yeah.
often you have to wait a lot longer than a year for a film
Yeah,
to
that's a
come.
quick turnaround, isn't
It's a
it?
very quick turnaround on this one.
Yeah,
But obviously, Hitchcock realized he had a hit on his hands
and he did because I mean, what is it, 63 years later, and we're still
talking about
talking
it,
about it. Yeah,
and the
that's a great.
remake could never
Nah,
stand up to it.
it's a great film. I was watching it and I was like, this is a great film. Sometimes you sit down and you watch a film and you're like, this is Shawshank Redemption. This is a great film. Silence of the Lambs. This is a great film. I
Notice
love
any
that.
connection between them?
No, I don't know. Whatever do you mean?
Nothing at all. Not at all.
I have a particular type of film that I like.
And
What are
then
you
she
gonna
likes
do?
and then she watches The Holiday.
Oh, I love that film. It's a great film. That's
That
a
isn't.
great film.
Yeah, that's a great film, and that's totally different to
Mm.
any of the others. I think we actually talked about that.
We did. We did it on your podcast. Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah.
talked about The Holiday, and now we've talked about Psycho, two very, very different films,
But both enjoyable.
but both very well done, I'd say.
Yes. I love The Holiday. I need to watch that again, actually.
I know, I think I'm going to have to dig out the DVD,
Mm.
unless I loaned it to my mum, which I possibly did.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but thank you ever so much for coming on and talking about this, because I don't think I'd have picked this book on my own by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I'm not, because I'm not doing my podcast anymore. I need to get my fix. So I was on Stuart's podcast on British Murders talking about Alison Botha. So I will nag both of you to let me come on to talk about stuff. So
Well, read Rebecca and we'll talk about that one.
okay, all right. I'll just use you to get my little fix.
Yes, I was going to say read Rebecca. I'm not going to loan you my copy of the book because it's a limited edition, but I definitely say,
I
yeah, buy it. It's one of those books I think that is really lovely to read as a physical book.
I have to have the book. I can't do the Kindle.
Yeah, I
Um,
struggle with the Kindle far more than I used to, which
yeah, I
is,
need the pages.
yeah,
Mm,
I like pages.
yeah, I can tell.
I especially like them when they have beautiful edges as well.
Yes, I'll paint some dragons on Rebecca and send it to you.
No, that's not the same. It's not Rebecca. It's a book by a Rebecca that has dragons in it that I'm annoyed about not getting a special edition of. But let's not go there, shall we? People that
Yeah.
don't order enough copies to sell to people.
Yes. Let's not go
Not
there.
annoyed at all. Anyway, thank you ever so much for coming on and talking about this. I'm going to say that multiple times, but it was fantastic to talk about something so different
Mm.
because this really was very different.
So every
Anyway,
few months, I'm gonna plant the seed of horror.
yeah, it's not gonna really. I mean, I do read a fair bit of horror, but not loads.
We need to do The Exorcist.
Uh, yeah, yeah, no. That one's definitely not gonna be on my list.
It's only a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I scare easy. We have established this.
Okay. Sleepers.
I think we talked about doing that one
Okay, I'll read. I've read that. I'll reread it. Let's do sleepers.
after you've
Right.
read Rebecca.
Okay. We'll do your one first.
Yeah, it's a classic. It is a classic
Would
novel.
you do a true crime one, like an actual real life one?
No.
Oh.
Sorry. No.
To
I
all Ray's listeners, tell her you want to listen to
I
a true
I
crime.
books are escapism, and if I read something that's true, it's not escaping from anything.
Okay.
I have to be
Call
honest.
yourself a book podcast.
Yes, I do. I call myself a fiction book podcast.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this weekend. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, why not share it with your friends and family? And please post a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other podcatchers where you listen. You can follow me on Twitter at being_bookish and on Instagram at beingbookishpod, or you can check out my website for a load of my unreleased book reviews at beingbookish.co.uk. Well, I've got a lot to get ready for next week, and I'm sure Lorraine is going to be digging through her books to find something else to torture me with. And a new book is actually calling me because I am 3/4 of the way through it because I started it this morning before work. So until next time, this is me saying farewell and farewell from Lorraine.
So long, farewell.
Bye.